So just say a bit more about that. This moving people around. I love that concept of punching people,
Not
not
punching in the face,
punching
Tim.
passports
Punching a
with
passport.
Passports.
capabilities. I love that concept because it's something I recognize in my own development in GBS jobs, but also of the team. And I've got to tell you that there's nothing that fills me with pride more than seeing people perhaps that I brought into a GBS getting promoted 2, 3 years later into a different role, preferably not in the first 6 months, which did tend to happen where I used to work, but more waiting 2 or 3 years. But I'm still seeing it today. People maybe we brought in 5 years, 6 years ago, still now getting promoted, and it's wonderful to see that. It's a big part of, I think, the like the transaction that you make with someone when you bring them in. You bring them in to give them the job, but also the future, if that's part of the deal. But just say a little bit more about how you punch the passports with capabilities, because that
Well,
sounds quite intriguing.
one of the things I'm seeing right now is that GBS organizations GBS organizations typically hire forensically. They might embellish the job description of the last person who had the role. And in an age of impending agentic and other forces, there are 36 forces, as you know, I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, 36 forces that are affecting GBS as an industry right now. The same capabilities are no longer as valid. They're still, we focus on functional capabilities, which I look at major and minor. The major should be GBS capabilities, process mastery, domain knowledge,
Yeah,
digital mastery, the ability to make a decision.
yeah,
Those are universal across GBS. The ability to understand DSO, to be honest with you, that's a minor.
yeah,
If we really want to make people interoperable and build capabilities, we need to map
yeah,
and we need to actively manage their careers
yeah,
and show them where they can go. We don't do
yeah,
that. But the good news is that I'm seeing companies out there right now who are rethinking their GBS career architecture.
yeah,
They're trying to pivot from a functionally oriented skills based to a
yeah,
capability oriented
yeah.
skills based. Is it a raging trend yet? No, but I think there's a dawning realization that as agentic takes away delivery,
Yeah,
execution responsibility from GBS, we're going to have different capabilities.
yeah,
I just to kind
it's,
of build on top of that, and Deb is by far, in my knowledge and my experience across the industry, nobody even comes close. You know, by far the best at truly getting into this particular area, researching it, having, frameworks and models. So the ad that I wanted to share is that from a practitioner standpoint, what tends to happen in most companies is that, you know, you've inherited this GBS job, or you brought in from outside
But
to
you
do
brought
it,
it on yourself, right?
or you brought it upon yourselves. Exactly. So what tends to happen is that, you know, your first order of business is usually to figure out how to put out the process fire or the cost fire or the innovation requirements or the growth requirements. Um, you've got a partner in the HR person who's supporting you. This is, in my experience, the first
mm,
point of failure. If you happen to work in a finance industry or a consumer goods industry or pharma industry, that HR person has been trained brilliantly on hiring and developing people in that respective industry. This is really where Deb shines, because what Deb has said is, guys, the skills and capabilities that are required to run a GBS isn't exactly the same as what you need in farm. Now, of course, there is an
yeah,
overlap, there's the
yeah.
foundation, things like that. But there are a few nuances that actually make or break most organizations. So
Mm,
I think that's point one. Point two is that GBS leaders still need to understand that actually deliberately planning the career of your people is win-win. Because think about
yeah,
it. most GBS organizations, people that start at the entry level, they start with transactional work. That's not their aspiration for the next 50 years to continue to do transactional stuff. They're hoping for a career. However, they've joined a shared services center or a pharma company, and people aren't really showing them that ladder that says, automate this. Please get rid of your own job, and then I will promote you to the next. That's the way it works. Instead, we're actually afraid to do that, right? And so the point that Deb made is incredibly important. You absolutely have to design a career model inside your GBS, inside your company, including, by the way, rotating people between GBS and other functions, and then bringing them
GBS.
back in. And within GBS is a given. Otherwise, you have no scale. Not for all jobs, but for at least developmental jobs, and then even outside of GBS. And I think that's really the insight that's incredibly important for new GBS leaders to know.
Yeah, but I will tell you, when I see resistance, the GBS leader seems to understand this. Their HR business partner or their CHRO. Hey, it's changing the world order here. What if we have works councils, for example? How are they going to react? One of the things I've suggested to the companies that I work with is that start by changing the career architecture within your centers, because you have much more hold, especially
that's within your control.
Especially if you are setting up a new center. Because let's face it, what do you do in a center? It could be a dead end unless you think differently. And being able to look at interoperability of roles, because a lot of the work we do is similar. For example, lease administration for real estate and L&E administration for L&E for in HR are fundamentally the same job. It's just one's dealing with brick and mortar and the other dealing with learning programs. So being able, by changing the career architecture in a center, you start to be able to reduce attrition and provide more, more fulfilling, more career paths for the people you have there. But the enemy of the people, to be honest with you, sometimes is chief people function.
Well, look,
that's a horrible thing to say.
You set me a challenge, and I'll definitely talk to our HR business partner about this. And we're lucky we're building a greenfield GBS, so we can try some stuff. So I'll take that conversation. Hopefully, anyone listening to this or with us now can think about the same thing.